object-oriented programming and how Python supports for creating objects and classes, and how to deal with modeling problems using object orientation in Python programming. Okay, students. Tell me, what is object-oriented programming, students? Anyone? Debamalia, tell what is object-oriented programming. Already you have studied C++, right? Debamalia Chatterjee, Anu, Priyanka, Benita. Hello, Rajeshwari.
Hello, sir. I'm Devmala.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಾ ಎಲ್ಲ? Anu?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, Debamalia, tell me.
Yes. You are telling that what is object-oriented programming?
Yeah.
Sir, object-oriented programming is paradigm based on the concept of objects
Yeah.
that's contain data and code. The data in form fields and code in the form of procedures.
Code in
This
the
feature,
repeat. Pardon. Repeat once again.
uh, sir, object-oriented programming is based on the concept of objects, which can contains the data and code, and the data in the form of fields and code in the form of procedures, and the procedures. Yes, sir.
Okay. Then
And the feature of object is that object's own procedures can access to modify data fields of itself, sir.
that means only the data members, only the objects of the same class can modify the data of that class. Okay. What about the features of object-oriented programming?
Features of
Rajeshwari, you tell what are the features of object-oriented programming?
Yes, sir.
How many languages you have studied so far? You have studied so many object-oriented languages, like already Python you have studied, C++ you have studied. I think Java also
Sir,
you
can
have
I
studied. Yeah.
Sir, can I tell you
No.
features of object-oriented?
No, I'll ask others. Nayana?
Okay, sir.
Nayana,
Thank you.
are you here? Nayana? Vishal?
Sir.
Vishal? Yeah,
Sir.
tell me some of the features of object-oriented programming.
Inheritance.
Yes.
Polymorphism, then encapsulation.
Yes.
Then data abstraction.
Yes.
Objects and classes, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay. So anything left out? Gangubai?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, tell me, what are the features of object-oriented programming?
Sir, same inheritance, polymorphism, and data abstraction, encapsulation, and object and classes. We are using this.
Okay, fine. So almost you have covered. Okay, let us see one by one. So basically, what is the difference between object-oriented programming and structured programming languages? That we need to understand. See, the structured programming always follows top-down approach. Then The object-oriented programs always follows bottom-up approach. Okay. So what is top-down approach? Sequential execution. See, even in Python, if you do not create objects, even that follows top-down approach. But when I say object-oriented programming, obviously you will be creating a class, then objects, then to play around the objects, you create the data members, isn't it? Then member functions you create. So when I say class, actually it contains two things: data members and member functions. And you will bind it in the form of an object. That is called encapsulation. So you're telling one of the feature of object-oriented programming is encapsulation. So what to encapsulate? If you can bind data and member functions together, that process is called binding. Okay. And what is the purpose of encapsulating data members and member functions together? So it provides a security where the objects and objects of the same class can access these member functions, isn't it? It is not that the objects of other class can also access this. It is not like that. The members of the same class can access this member functions. So that is encapsulation. Then another feature, that is data hiding. What is data hiding? What is data hiding? See, if you go to any object-oriented programming language, there is something called as access specifiers, isn't it? Say, for example, in C++, you have public, private, and protected, isn't it? See, private means only the members of that class, only the objects of that class can access. Public means even the objects of other class can access. Then protected means only the previously inherited class can access its data members. So that is called protected members. So that provides a mechanism using which you can hide your data. Okay, that is data hiding. Then inheritance. If the child class is inheriting features from its parent class, we call that process as inheritance. And you know, there are so many types of inheritance, isn't it? Single level inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, multiple inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hybrid inheritance, and so on. Then polymorphism. So under polymorphism, we have two types: runtime polymorphism, and that is also called as dynamic polymorphism, and compile time polymorphism, which is called as static. Okay, static polymorphism. So, okay, one is static. The compile time is called as static, and the runtime is called as dynamic. What is dynamic polymorphism or dynamic binding? Static binding and dynamic binding. And the other name is early binding and late binding. Early binding is static binding. Late binding is dynamic binding. If your program can identify the appropriate member function to invoke during compile time, we call it as early binding. If it fails to identify during compile time, but it is identifying the appropriate method to invoke during runtime, then we call it as late binding. So in C++, we had function overloading, operator overloading, and all those things, isn't it? So this function overloading and all that comes in static binding. Whereas you have a concept of virtual functions. So virtual functions is a method of implementing dynamic binding, because when you implement that concept, so your compiler will not come to know during the compile time which method to invoke. Okay, because in case of virtual function, what happens? So the base class will be having some function name, and even after inheritance, even all the child classes will be having the same function name. So it fails to make a decision which one to invoke when you are invoking a function. So that decision will be taken during runtime. So hence we say that virtual functions is one of the virtual functions is one of the method using which you can implement dynamic binding. Then students, tell me what is class and what is object. I'll share the screen. Yeah, just now still I'm asking the questions, so that's why I have not yet shared the screen. Okay, so nothing is been started as per the syllabus. Yeah, tell me. What is class and what is object? Tell me what is class, what is object? Nayana?
Class is a content of object.
Class is a?
Content of object, sir.
Not content. It's a container that contains objects. You can tell like that.
Yes, sir. And object is nothing but it behaves of the class, behavior of the class.
No. Not like that. You should put it in a better way. Any other answer?
Instance of a class. Object is.
Object is an instance of a class. Okay, then correct. Then what is class?
Class is a user-defined data type.
Yeah. So a class is an user-defined data type. That is correct, and it basically it contains objects. It's a collection of objects. It's a user-defined type, and we also call it as it's an class is an abstract data type. So why we call that abstraction is one of the feature of object-oriented programming. Any idea? What is abstraction? Showing only the essentials and hiding the implementation. That is called abstraction. See, most of the times what we do when we write a class, we create data members and we declare the member functions, but most of the times we define the functions outside the class, isn't it? That is called abstraction. So if you look at the structure of the class, it will show you only the abstract information. So what is that abstract information? So what are the data members? What is its data type? What are the member functions? So what is its return type? What is the name of the member function? What are the parameters? But it doesn't show the implementation part. So that is called actually the abstraction. That means showing the essentials and hiding the implementation. So just like any other programming language, even Python supports to create classes and objects, because that is also an object-oriented programming language. But most of the times what we do, we call Python as a general purpose programming language. Why? Because we have so far finished the 3 modules, but we never wrote any program that will make use of class and objects. That means we can use Python to write object-oriented programming and also to write to solve normal programs without using the concept of class. So hence we call Python as a general purpose programming language, but at the same time it is also an object-oriented language as well. So you need to understand what is the purpose of using object-oriented programming language. See, the whole purpose of using any object-oriented programming language is that we can model the program by using the concept of objects and class. So what is the meaning of modeling a program using objects and class? Say for example, if I say I have given a problem, say so there is a library in a college, so the task is to develop a software for that. So now how I should model the problem? So first I need to understand what is the library. So what is the purpose of the library? to the purpose of the library is to maintain the repository of the books, periodicals, journals, newspapers, and so on, and to distribute it to the faculty and the students as and when required. Then, so overall the objects that will be interacting with the library, so it is the students, faculty, librarian, and associated library staff. So these are the people. So now what I'll do, so I'll consider all these participants are as the objects. So I can consider, so based upon these objects I can create the classes. So I can create librarian as one class, book issuer as one class, student as one class, then faculty as one class. Okay, then the characteristics of these classes are nothing but the attributes. Okay, so how to identify the, for example, student. I can identify the student with the name of the student, USN, semester. So these are all the characteristics of a student or the attributes. So all these things will become data members of the student class. So like that I do modeling of the problem. So ultimately when I decide, so what are the classes, what are the attributes, and after that what I decide, I'll decide what is the functionality of each class. So that becomes the member functions. Say for example, book issuer or the librarian. So what is its function? What is its functionality? To issue the books and to receive the books. So that becomes member functions. So like this, the whole purpose of having a program, object-oriented programming language is to model the real-time problems using object-oriented concepts. Okay, so that means by using the concept of classes and objects, we can solve the real-time problems. Then at the same time, we should know when we should not use object-oriented programming and when we should use object-oriented programming. Say for example, when you are I'll explain some logic and I am asking you to implement this algorithm. Okay, obviously, so that is only one simple meaningful task that I have given to you. So here there is no necessity of creating a class and solving it. Okay, simply just like just you can create one Python program and you can define one function and you can finish it. See, if you are supposed to model something and out of that problem, if you can extract some classes or the objects, okay, then it makes some sense to rely upon object-oriented programming. Students, I think I had taken what is that, software engineering for you, right? Isn't it? Hello? Hello, students?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, at the time I had shown you. So how to create a class, how to define class, how to define the class diagram, object diagram, isn't it? How to model the real-time problems using UML. So UML is one tool using which you can model object-oriented concepts. We call it as UML modeling. Okay, students, we'll come back to OOPS. So OOP is nothing but object-oriented programming. As you told, a class is an user-defined data type. That is correct. And one more point about the class is that so it is also an abstract data type, and it binds data members and member functions together. Okay, the purpose of the function is to bind data members and member functions together. So look at here, Python is an object-oriented programming language, and class is a basis for any object-oriented programming language. Class is a user-defined type which binds data and functions together in a single entity. So that single entity itself is called as a class. A single entity that binds data members and member functions together, that is called as the class. Class is just a prototype or a logical entity or a blueprint which will not consume any memory. Okay, so say the meaning of the statement that they are telling that The class doesn't consume any memory. It is just a prototype. And an object is an instance of a class. So what is the meaning of instance of a class? I told a class is a collection of objects. Okay, and each object is nothing but an instance of a class. That means each object represents the class. One can create any number of objects for a class. So now in the below example, I'll tell you what is the meaning of instance of the class. So instance of the class is that, see, you should refer, see, every class contains object. If a class doesn't contain any object, we call it as empty class. Okay, so if a class doesn't contain any object, we call it as an empty class. And you can see here, just like in C++, by using the class keyword, here also we can create a class. Look at the syntax. Class is the keyword and point is the name of the class, and the colon. Colon indicates the beginning of the class. And you can look at here, this is the keyword pass. This pass indicates that point is a class and it is an empty class. So okay, so like this we can create an empty class. Class point colon, then type pass. That means I'm creating one empty class. Now if I try to print name of the class, it will print like this. So the meaning of this is the term underscore main underscore indicates that class point is in the main scope. The class point is in the main scope of the current module. In other words, the class is at the top level while executing the program. The class is at the top level while executing the program. And this is empty class because I am using the pass keyword. A class can have a set of variables, also known as attributes or member variables, and member functions, also known as methods. So here the functions are called as methods and the variables are called as attributes or data members. Okay, students, now look at the syntax. So class point, this is how you can create a class, and this pass keyword indicates that it is the empty class. Then how to create the object? Say for example, if I want to create an object by name P, then P is equal to point. So this is a constructor. This is a point constructor. You know the concept of constructors, right? What is constructor, student?
Sir, same name as that of class name, sir.
Yeah, what is the purpose? The purpose of the constructor is to initialize the objects. So here also I'm initializing the object. Okay, this is called instantiation. Now look at here. Now a reference to the class point is created, and that reference is nothing but the object P. Okay, now a reference to point object is created and is returned. This return reference is assigned to object P. That means now it will create one reference to the class point, and that will be returned to P, and that is nothing but the address of this class point, and that address will be in the form of hexadecimal format. So look at this. If you print P here, so now what is P? P is the object of type point. Now I have created a object P which is of type point, and if I try to print that P, it will print like that, like this. Underscore main underscore dot point object at, look at this. So this is the address of the object. That means it is printing the address of the object which is in hexadecimal format. The output displays the address in hexadecimal format of the object in the memory. It is now clear that the object occupies the physical space, whereas the class doesn't. Okay, students. Now that means, say for example, so I have two classes, P and P1. Okay, now let us assume this your class contains two integer objects, sorry, two integer variables. So that is 2 plus 2, 4 bytes. So this P occupies 4 bytes and P1 also occupies 4 bytes because I have created two objects. Then what is the total size of the class is 4 plus 4, 8 bytes, because I have to only, even though I have two variables which are nothing but the data members, so same data members are shared by, okay, or okay, it is not shared. Each and every object will be having one copy of the data member. Okay, say for example you have x and y, int x comma y. So P maintains one copy of x comma y. Similarly, P1 also maintains one copy of x comma y. So 4 bytes for P and 4 bytes for P1. Okay, but individually if you ask, okay, what is the size of the class? Okay, without considering the objects. If I exclude the objects, the size of the class is 0 bytes, because look at here, the class doesn't occupy any space, whereas the object will occupy the space. What that object contains? The object contains data members. Say for example, if you have one integer and one float, so 2 plus 4 bytes, that is 6 bytes. The size of the object is 6 bytes. Like that it will be calculated. Now let us see how to create the attributes. Attributes are nothing but the characteristics of an entity. That is, objects are nothing but, sorry, the attributes are nothing but the data members. So now I have created the object P. Then how to create the data members? P dot x is equal to 10. That means I am creating one data member by name x. Okay, and I am attaching it to P. Because what is P? P is the object of type point. So P dot x is equal to 10. P dot y is equal to 20. Now if you look at the object diagram, see, look at this. This is the object diagram. Name of the class is point. Okay, name of the class is point, and P is the object, which is nothing but an instance of the class, and it contains two variables, x and y. X value is 10 and y value is 20. So like this, it will be represented inside the memory. So this is a memory diagram of the object. Clear, students? This is the memory diagram or the object diagram of the, this is the object diagram of class point. The diagram indicates that variable, that is object P, refers to point object. It refers to point object, which contains two attributes. Each attribute refers to the floating point number, that is 10.0 and 20.0. So then how to access these values? We can access these values by using object name dot variable name, that is P dot x and P dot y. Okay, P is the object and x and y are the data members, name of the variables. Here P dot x means go to the object P, refers to, and get the value of x. Okay, here P dot x means go to the object P, refers to, that means where go to the address that is pointed by object P and get the value of x. That's the meaning, and get the value of x. That's the meaning. Attributes of an object can be assigned to other variables like this. X is equal to P dot x, then print x, or you can do z is equal to P dot x, print z. Okay, now we will see one complete program. So what is that program is? We will see how to model one problem. So how to find the Euclidean distance. Write a class point representing a point on coordinate system. Look at here. Problem statement, write a class point representing a point on the coordinate system and implement the functions. So you need to implement one function, read underscore point, to receive x and y attribute values of a point object as user input. That means from the keyboard you need to read the values of x and y by using read underscore point, and you need to implement distance function, which takes two objects of point class as arguments and computes the Euclidean distance between them. So you need to take 2 points which are nothing but objects of the class point, and then find the Euclidean distance between the 2 points. Then print underscore point to display one point in the form of ordered pair. To display one point in the form of ordered pair. Students, first of all, we should know, so what is the problem? What is the problem statement, and what is the actual input, and what is the expected output? So this problem is all about implementing a point in the coordinating system. Then we need to take 2 points. See, when I say point, it contains both x and y coordinate. That we need to understand. So in coordinate system, each point is represented by x and y coordinates. So when I say 2 points, say point 1 and point 2, then you are supposed to find out the Euclidean distance between those 2 points. For that, there is a formula. That formula is, you can see here, square root of x1 minus x2 whole square plus y1 minus y2 whole square. So that will be implemented here. Okay, that we are supposed to implement. So that you have to implement as part of distance function. Under distance function, you are supposed to compute Euclidean distance between the 2 points. Then to print, okay, print underscore point to display one point in the form of ordered pair. So to solve this problem, since it is a mathematical problem and we know that formula is square root of x1 minus x2 whole square plus y1 minus y2 whole square. So we need to use math. What is that? Math is a module. So import math first. First we are importing the math module, then creating a class point. This colon indicates the beginning of the class. Then students, tell me, what is this? If you put single colon or double colon 3 times, it indicates what? It indicates that it is a comment. It's a multi-line comment. Okay. Now look at here. So I'll come to here later. So these are the function definitions. So read underscore point, print underscore point, and distance. So now look at here. First, how we are creating the objects. First, I'm creating the object. P1 is equal to point. Create the first object. Then print, enter the first point. That means I'm asking the user to enter the first point. Then I'm calling the function read underscore point of P1. So where is read underscore point? Here it is. So it will ask the user enter x coordinate. So the moment you enter the x coordinate, so when you are entering, it is a string value. Then we need to convert it into floating point. So hence we are typecasting. We are converting that string value into floating point, and we are saving it as p.x. Okay, p.x. That means here x is the data member, p is the object. Similarly, enter y coordinate. Convert it into floating point and save it in y. Okay. How to save it in y? We have to make use of the object, that is p.y is equal to value. Then after reading point 1, we are creating one more point, p2. P2 is equal to point constructor. Print, enter second point. Once again call the read function. So once again you will be entering x and y coordinates of second point. Then, so now we are done with getting the input from the keyboard. So we have 2 points now, and we have the coordinate values, x and y coordinate values. Then call the distance function, dist. Okay, so distance function will return d. Okay, it will return d. So therefore, to store the result, we should have left side variable. So distance is equal to distance of p1 comma p2. Okay, now implement our logic. So our logic is square root of x1 minus x2 whole square plus y1 minus y2 whole square. So now p1 dot x, x1 is nothing but p1 dot x minus p2 dot x. Then this is called repetition factor. That is, we can write whole square like this. Okay, so this will repeat this expression 2 times, plus p1y minus p2y, repeat this 2 times, that is whole square. Then compute the result, store the result is nothing but the distance between 2 points, that is stored in the variable d, and we are returning d. So d is the distance between 2 points, that is called as a Euclidean distance. So then come back. So here we are making a call, isn't it? Okay, so now we have computed and we have stored the result in dist. Okay, print first point is print underscore point p1. So you just print what is the first point. See, students, look at here, this is percentage g. Okay, you can print all the numeric values by using percentage g. So in this case it is float, isn't it? Okay, print percentage g comma percentage g, okay, which represents percentage of p dot x comma p dot y. Okay, so this first percentage g is for p dot x, that is percentage p dot x, and second percentage g represents p dot y, that is one is x coordinate, another one is y coordinate. Similarly, print second point, print underscore point of p2. So print second point, then compute the distance. So the distance is percentage g, that is percentage of distance of p1 comma p2, or you can straight away you can put percentage d, because we have stored it in percentage d, isn't it? Sorry, percentage dist. Okay, here you can put percentage dist or percentage of distance of p1 comma p2, either one is okay. Students, any doubt in this? One thing you need to observe here, we don't write explicitly the main function here. In case of C++ programming, what we are doing, after defining the class, we used to write the main function, but here we don't write the main function. Okay, so we don't use that main function and all, but still we assume that. So this code snippet, now whatever I have highlighted, this is part of the main function. This is within the scope of main function. Okay, now I assume that here within the main function I am creating the object p1, and I am reading from the keyboard what is the point 1. So similarly point 2, and from the main function I am computing the distance and I am printing the results. Okay, students, now I'll give you one task. Take a screenshot. Everyone take this screenshot. Everyone take the screenshot. Finished? I want reply. Take the screenshot.
Yes, sir.
Everyone. So now we need to type this program, execute, and post the result on the GCR. Okay. So it is better to save as pointer.py. So it will be very easy for us. So when we create a class, so let it be the standard way of storing the program point.py. You store it as point.py and execute it and post the source code as well as output on the GCR. Okay, so students, we have lab tomorrow, right? Python lab. In Python lab tomorrow, we are going to solve one object-oriented programming problem. Okay, so that's why today I started object-oriented programming. So we'll solve one problem in the lab, maybe today or tomorrow. So now you need to type this program, then execute and post the output on the GCR. Okay, you can start typing. By the time I'll take the attendance.